Welcome to the Pick Your Lane podcast with your hosts, Chad Robinson and Peter Lound, featuring successful entrepreneurs and investors who have created financial and time freedom through their passive income and picked their lane through an investment or business in pursuit of bringing them a better future. Now let's get started.
On this episode today of the Cashflow Canucks podcast, where we go in and we're really trying to help people get passive income and strategies on how you can grow your passive income and your wealth over the long term. And today we have an amazing guest, Michael Hughes, who's on here. And I've known Michael for quite a while because part of building passive wealth is coming up to opportunities and feeling comfortable to network with people and grow your spheres of influence so you can find some of these opportunities. And because of that, we wanted to have one of the, Canada's greatest networking professionals that I've known, and Michael Hughes, who's had a great career and teaching people how to network. And it was amazing. You pivoted a little bit like many of us when COVID happened and teaching people how to network online. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got started.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks for the invitation. Thrilled to be here. As my wife would say, I'm tickled pink, and looking forward to just chatting with you folks a little bit. And yeah, my story is it's not unique. It's like many other professionals, and maybe falls into some of the journey that some of your listeners have been into. I mean, I was in the corporate world for 23 years. I worked for two major Canadian corporations, and I tell people at the peak of my corporate career, I was literally and figuratively fired into success. I always like to let that hang there for about 30 seconds. And that happened being equal measure Irish and French Canadian heritage. I did one of those. I'm mad as heck. I'm never taking this anymore. I've never put my future in someone else's hands. Start my own company. And, it's been an interesting journey. I've been at it over 20 years now and, bounced around for a few years doing anything for anybody. And at some point I remember sitting with one of my mentors and I was lamenting my situation because I was going broke really quick. And he looked at me and he said, Mike, you're a one-person company. You got to get out there and network. You got to work your network. That's how you're going to be successful. And I was a middle-aged professional. I figured I knew what networking was, but I respected this coach, if you will. And so I took his message seriously. I started reading everything I could get my hands on. When it came to networking, I started watching the successful people. I watched what they did, watched how they acted. And, over time, I started to put into practice some of the principles I'd read about and the strategies I'd seen in those successful professionals. And all of a sudden, my business started to grow. Not overnight, but it started to grow. And, I said to myself, there's something here. There's a theme here that at that time wasn't being addressed. And really what it was helping professionals better understand the impact of connecting with others, communicating effectively, and building collaborative relationships. Because, Chad, you're absolutely right. No one succeeds alone. And one of the biggest and most important aha moments I had was when I realized that networking isn't a 30-second to 3-minute interaction. What it is it's an ignition point. It brings two individuals together and acts as the catalyst for the powerful relationships that are the basis for success in business and in life. They say that to be successful, you need OPM and OPW, other people's money and other people's wisdom. And, when it comes to folks like you and the message you're getting out to folks to help them look at maybe alternate strategies, alternate career planning to start developing all of that. My mission over the last 20 plus years has been to help professionals understand how to look at networking as a relationship igniter and a relationship accelerator, because that's what it's designed to do. And so my program, my philosophy, my methodology has been to relentlessly, some would say obsessively, look at this networking piece from a whole bunch of different angles and look at how it works. And the fundamental principle, the way this works is we need other people. We're social beings, right? Yeah. So we need to get out there and meet people. And over the last number of years, I've grown my practice speaking to organizations across North America and working with organizations and individuals to help them understand the philosophy and methodology of connecting, communicating, and building collaborative relationships. And all that went really well until we got to March 2020. And, it hit me like a ton of bricks because this is a face-to-face kind of environment, right?
Yeah, you were a work the room guy.
Absolutely. Like I turned around and my business, the door slammed shut overnight. So I said, am I going to close the business down? Have people stopped networking? And I said, no, they haven't stopped networking. They've just transitioned to an environment that is more attuned with our current situation. And so what's happened over the last 3 years, and I think one of the most important pieces for me, is really looking at how we as human beings have adapted. I mean, for all the negative things that the pandemic brought us, there are some great benefits. And one of them is our ability and need to use technology to be able to connect with one another, keep building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the big pieces. And even today, when the pandemic is in kind of the rearview mirror, everybody's coming out face to face, the virtual world is still there. It's going to stay with us. Mm-hmm. And it's so important for professionals who want to develop a new idea, who want to grow their career, who want to develop into some new area, need to continue looking at virtual connections as a way to do it. Now, whether that's through LinkedIn, through Facebook, or one of the other social media, it's important and necessary for everyone to understand that this is here to stay. Okay. I mean, the one thing that we discovered as human beings is that we can and do connect with one another virtually. Not as well as face-to-face, because there are some limitations, but we have done it. We are doing it, and we will continue to do it. And that's one of the biggest things I'm trying to promote to professionals now, is to accept and understand that the virtual world that we're all in, like the conversation we're having today, mm-hmm. is here to stay. Now, it requires a different mindset, and it requires new skills. And those are the things I find that professionals don't really understand and appreciate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's how Peter and I got together. We networked online, then we connected on a group, and then over the last couple of years built a friendship, and then now we're doing this podcast together, and it's just like you said, it's connection, collaboration, and building that community.
And so using that as an example, there are certain things now when it comes to face-to-face networking. Just about every professional understands how it works, right? We know the rules of engagement is how we've lived since we've been born, connecting with other people, walking into a room, having that face-to-face conversation, reading the facial cues and body language and all that. And so we understand how things work. And so there's a process there we follow, right? You connect with someone, you might exchange business cards either live or virtually. Then you set up a meeting, you go and have coffee together, or you go to their office and you sit down with them, and that grows and develops over time. Online, there's what I call a relationship gap. People think differently for some reason. And many of the professionals I've worked with over the last 3 years have not recognized and realized that they think differently. Because online, we misunderstand that a connection, agreeing to connect with someone else, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on LinkedIn, when you agree to, people think that equates to a relationship. It's not. It's the equivalent of exchanging a business card. And in online again, the mindset is, I want to connect, qualify, and close. Mm-hmm. That's how we think. But in real life, we would never do that because relationships take time, they need to be nurtured, and they require investment. And right. Online, they require even more investment.
100%. I so often get a connection on Facebook, right? It's like, I add a friend, hi. I'm like, hi. Would you like to buy? Like, no. It's that literally, walking in and somebody like throwing up a sales pitch in your face. It's to your point. Absolutely. It takes a much longer time to build and connect.
And one of the issues there is that people don't recognize how we've changed or how the marketplace has changed. And so relationship building needs to change. It needs to adapt to that new environment. Because in pre-COVID times, let's just talk about one thing. First of all, talk about communication, because that's the big piece, right? You were just saying about somebody inviting you to connect and then going into the sales pitch. There's four communication vehicles. There's verbal, nonverbal, there's written, and visual. Well, pre-COVID, it was all verbal, nonverbal, right? 90% of our interactions with people was face-to-face, verbal, nonverbal. When COVID arrived, that all disappeared, and the only thing that was left was written. But people don't realize or don't accept that we don't think of written communication the same as verbal communication. It's overly structured, it's usually too long, And what we end up doing is we all look to transfer information. We think of written communication as a transfer of information, updating a proposal, sending additional information. When today, one of the most important and impactful communication vehicles is technology-based communication. And it's imperative that professionals think in terms of using that not only to transfer information, but as a relationship-building vehicle. It's absolutely incredible to me. And so the message I'm trying to give professionals today is when you think in terms of virtual relationship building, you want to think in terms of your most powerful and effective vehicle being written or technology-based communication. And in that technology communication, it's about, the term I use, or the analogy I use, is a pendulum. When you first meet someone, like you make that initial connection, and you want to just send the pendulum one way with a short message. And you want to have them answer that so you get that pendulum moving back and forth until you can talk to them live. Because that's when the real relationship building starts, is when you talk to them live.
That for me is maybe the biggest problem I run into is, I think moving online, definitely can see the how things can expand. So in multiples, right? Versus what you would do in person. We may have to go back to that as well in terms of how you work in a hybrid. But, my question is more where I get stuck on is email. Email, like I find, is very one note and can get very misinterpreted without like facial expression, without intonation, all those things. So I guess that's the point where you're saying keep it short and sweet and just get that connection so that you can get to that next point.
Okay, well, you see, Peter, this is where I would challenge you on that. Because I have found this is a skill. Okay, written communication is a skill. And we need to change our mindset from looking at it as just sending information to the opportunity to craft a message that can and will project your professionalism, your sincerity, your transparency, and is genuine to someone. And that's about the words you use, okay? There's words like support, words like integrate, words like love. I said that to somebody a couple of weeks ago. He said, love? You put love in an email? I said, well, if you and I were having a conversation, and I said, Peter, I'd love to get together with you and find out more about that. You wouldn't hesitate to use that. Yet online, we don't do that. I call it humanizing the conversation. Mm-hmm. And it's about thinking more about the words you're using and what you're projecting. And utilizing that as an opportunity to be able to advance the relationship. Right. And it's a series of emails or responses that go back and forth as you continue to build until you can talk to them face to face. Because that's the first objective, right? When you meet someone online, it's like that first date, right? Mm. Yeah, what you want to do, the first objective is you want to get that pendulum swinging, shorter conversations. I just finished reading a fabulous book. It's called On Writing Well by Adam Zinsser, or William Zinsser, the classic guide to writing nonfiction. I recommend it for every professional now because it's the type of professional development we need to look at. Right. I have used, I sent thousands of email messages, LinkedIn invitations, Facebook exchanges to folks, and I can tell you that over time I've learned to be more specific, to be more brief, and to be more effective using the language I have because I can project that. So LinkedIn is a good one because so you send an invitation, you send a request to connect to someone, or you get a request to connect to someone. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you do? You go check their profile, right? Check their profile. And if they're not from Zambia and they're selling blood diamonds, whatever, if they're locals or professional, what do? You click connect. What happens next?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing, right? That's what I used to do. Then I said, I'm not doing that anymore, but I want to use language that will project. So here's what I started doing, folks. I started saying, hi, Chad. Thanks for reaching out. Honored to be part of your LinkedIn network. Really curious about why you chose to connect with me. Yeah. The language you use is incredibly important. Hi, Chad. Thanks for reaching out. Honored to be part of your LinkedIn network. Really curious about why you chose to connect with me.
Nice.
And I'm just giving you that as an example of how to craft a message that will elicit a response. Yeah. What I want that person to do is respond to me. And that can happen in any conversation we do. It's changing your thinking from that single dimension professional perspective to a multidimensional, multifaceted perspective that can address any number of pieces.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to ask you, so LinkedIn, you gave an example. Is that kind of your main platform that you work from? Is that...
Yeah, LinkedIn is my main platform. I'm quite active on Facebook as well, but everything we're talking about here is just as applicable on any platform. Mm-hmm. It's more about perspective, it's more about skill, and it's more about intention. See, my definition of networking is the intentional process of creating and developing relationships from an initial contact to an ultimate outcome.
Right.
See, Chad, you said, you and Peter met online, kind of like it was an accident, right? There are no networking accidents.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and you're right, because Peter and I, you're right. We connected with intentionality, right? We intended to connect and build the relationship and help each other. And that was what I struck both Peter and I. We both have this kind of servant attitude where we like to help people and help each other. And that was literally our first conversation is, how can I help your business? It wasn't about how you can help my business. It's how can I help you? And then it grew because he had the same kind of philosophy. So,
and yet sometimes when we connect with people, that doesn't, it's not self-evident. Okay. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to help folks bring that out. It's all about discovering. I tell people every person you meet has the potential to help you to the extent that he or she is willing and able. Mm-hmm. Your mission, I believe your obligation, is to stimulate their willingness as you discover their ability relative to your situation. To stay on this topic of the virtual piece, that's my big agenda now, is helping professionals better understand how to leverage and maximize those online connections that happen in a way that not mimics, but emulates the face-to-face process that we there. And there is a process there that happens over time. I call it the social process. So anyways, that's where we are today.
That's amazing. And you built a course on this.
Well, listen, I've been helping professionals understand and reevaluate how they look at networking for over 20 years. And over that time, I've developed a proprietary methodology that I've been sharing with folks. Now, it did encompass pre-COVID a virtual component. And once we hit COVID, I had to flip the whole thing, and the majority, if not all of the content or the messaging or the methodology had to do with how to build relationships online, because that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. People talk about, I have 10,000 connections. Who cares? It's what those connections mean to you, right? And what they can do for you, and that's all about building relationships.
And maybe mean to them as well, right? What it means to them and what it means to them.
Absolutely. It's about looking at these connections from the perspective of their capacity as a resource to help you, In the network research I've done, because networking happens within a network, right? So there's a whole separate area of content here that I've worked up on around networks and how they work, and there are fundamental laws. And so around networks, and one of the first questions I always ask people, like, how many connections do you have? And so they tell me, and I say, well, in those connections, have you analyzed how many of those really represent an opportunity for you? And have you really invested in those relationships to proactively build them to where you want to go? It's called the law of preferred attachment. It says some relationships, because of their positioning, their power, and their maturity, have more potential. And it's how to work that. So it's...
I was really surprised to your point. Is the last couple of days ago, I was doing a speaking engagement where I was the keynote speaker at an event, and so after the event, I had typical people coming up and chatting with you, and the number of people that were telling me that they follow me on social media and that they're following me on this platform or that platform, and I had never met them and never noticed them, but they had followed, like they knew everything about me. They had followed all my posts. I'm like, to your point, here's a relationship already that I had no idea I had, right? And now by engaging with them face to face, it's now taken to the next level. But if I had been a bit more intentional about working my network to those people, could have had a relationship much sooner.
And I'm no different than anybody else, Chad, because when this idea first came to me, and I said, well, I'm going to go look at mine. I think there were only 5 to 10% of my connections, because we tend to attract our colleagues, the people who kind of like us, have no value, whatever. So I was able in that analysis to cherry pick 8 to 10 people that I proactively over the next while reconnect with them, start a conversation with them, build that relationship so that I could intentionally leverage the network to where it needed to go.
Wow.
You have that capacity. Peter has that capacity. Everyone has that capacity. So maybe one takeaway is for folks to look at, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok, to look at those and say, okay, who exactly are my followers? And just do a little analysis of who do I feel are those people that I want and need to connect with, would have value for my organization, for my business, for my career, or for my life. Because relationships are holistic, right? They transcend the profession. Like, how many times has someone in your personal life had an impact on your career? And then how many times has someone in your career supported or helped your personal life? Happens all the time.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, so speaking to what Chad had just mentioned about followers and all these social media personalities, to build a solid network, I don't know, like the ideal network, maybe everybody has a different version of it, but is it more about the one-to-one connection, or is the one-to-many? What scenarios do you look at that as? What's more powerful for people?
Well, these are what we're talking about here is variations on a theme, right? First of all, right. It's all about the network. That's the number one piece. And so if you look from a professional perspective, there's a marketing piece which happens online, right? And that's how many people you build your visibility and your credibility by sharing value with folks, right? And then on the other hand, within that, there's a certain subsector of that network that has an interest or a willingness to want to know more or get more. And that changes and it ebbs and flows as the network expands, as it grows, and as it goes. So it's our responsibility as professionals to continually be involved and invest in a network. And that's why sharing value, like this kind of resource, is very helpful to folks, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's looking at those interactions you have, the likes, the shares, the comments you have, and seizing on those as an expression of interest, right? And that's different as you keep going. What is it the old saying, that people don't need you till they need you? Yeah. That's why it's so important to continually be in front of people. Now people look at being in front of people as just flogging content, but that's not what does it. It's the value. The more value you project to others, the more they will look at you, listen to you, read you, and begin to respond. And when the time is right for them, they will let you know. I was just reading, there's I can't remember who the author's name is, but he called that a 99-1 ratio. When you put content out there, 100 people will just look at it, 9 people will like it, and 9 people will like or comment, and 1 person will respond. So it works exponentially from there.
Makes sense, though. That's been kind of my experience as well. Just kind of that ratio. That seems to be what it resonates with.
So you see, the 100 views are what's called vanity metrics, right? That's what we're also proud of. I have 10,000, I got 6,000 followers. But the reality is, the importance is in reviewing that content, looking at who's liking, sharing, and commenting, and then digging into those people to see if they are individuals who are aligned with the needs, with the value that you're projecting, and then starting a conversation with them. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And using that conversation and the communication that ensues. And today, let me reiterate, today, the majority of that happens online through technology-based communication. 80% of our professional communication now happens via email. And it happens via text. And it happens via virtual conferences like we're on now. Private chats you can have with people to connect with them. So it's incredibly important for professionals today to understand, yes, be online, stay online, and utilize online, but more importantly, leverage it and change your communication strategy to reflect the technology-based communication, how it can enhance and grow relationships over time.
Absolutely. That's great advice. So how do people find out about your course and more information about your services?
Simplest way, Chad, is just to visit www.networkingforresults.com. And all of my courses are there. All of my content is there. All the information about me is there. And, that's where I live online.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's filled with a lot of nuggets here in terms of what your process is about, how you built this. I want to ask one more question before we kind of close this out, but you talked about a couple pivots throughout your life too. And I think that's important for people to hear as well. You were in the corporate world, you went into a business, I'm not sure what the business was, and then had this like some kind of burning desire to move into this networking piece. Can you talk a little bit about that? What kind of drove you to make those moves, and even the move to online as well, other than obviously things stop, but what's driven you throughout this journey?
Great question. Great question. And listen, I got to tell you, when I got let go from my corporate role, it was one of the most devastating instances in my life. I'm a proud guy, I really am, and it hurt. I mean, I knew it was coming, and the situation was such that it was going to happen. But when it happened, it was really hard emotionally, psychologically. But I remember sitting down saying to myself, you know what, there's something I was meant to do. And I think now is the time for me to make that transition. Because, it's all about purpose. And purpose happens either externally or internally. Purpose is either driven to you or you're driven to it. Well, in my case, the purpose drove me out of the corporate world. And then I started to look at, well, what can I do? What do I like? What do I enjoy? What am I passionate about? And for me, it was helping others. Training, coaching, consulting. It's what I had done in one of my previous roles and was what I enjoyed most. And so when that happened, I just looked and said, well, what could I do? And so I said, I want to become a consultant. And so I made up a little one-page thing about what that would look like. And I went to see some of the folks I knew in the corporate world that I respected, I knew would keep my secret. And I shared it with them. And they said, well, Mike, this is great. We think you'd do a great job, but we can't think of anybody who would hire you. So I had to go back and rethink that. So I started, actually before I was let go, because there was a 6-month period between the time I actually realized it was going to happen when it actually did happen. What I did was I started working internally in the corporation I was working in to go to certain outlets and work with those owners, those entrepreneurs, to help them achieve an outcome. And it was all about reducing wage costs. And so I managed in the 4 months before that, I worked with about a dozen guys, and I was able to produce results. So now I had a track record. So when I got let go, I started my company, and I started reselling my services back to the corporation as an outside consultant, working individually with the owners of the stores in the corporation. And so that got me started. And then as I got going and things were starting to go well for me, things ran their course with that, because that's things do, right? I just got to a point where I'd helped all the people I could in there. Then I started looking around and saying, like, what am I going to do now? And that's where I started moving into the training field. So this was about year 2, year 3. And then once I moved into the training field is when the networking piece came out as a logical step for me based on my circumstances, my situation, and my passion. Because I latched onto this. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm kind of obsessive about this and the importance and the need and how it can help others. And that's reiterated itself to me over and over and over again. So that's kind of my story moving out from it. But listen, was it easy? No. Was it simple? No. What is it they say about business? It will take 3 times as long, cost 3 times as much, and be 3 times as hard as you think it is.
So good. So good.
Absolutely. But I think 10 times more rewarding.
Oh, no. Listen, I wouldn't. I'm incredibly thankful and grateful for that situation, because it did force me to move forward in a direction I would not have moved forward in. And don't think I would have had the success, the enjoyment, or the satisfaction that I'm having.
Well, that's good. I think, Michael, it was really great to hear your story. I think that's maybe the most important one of the most important parts is really the passion and the purpose that you have behind all this, and has created this. Is not just creating a network, but you're creating multiple networks now, right, into something bigger for everyone else to share. And I enjoyed every bit of it that you've added to it. So we'll be sure to add this to the show notes, how do people get and connect with you, and we'll have to connect with you after this as well. So we appreciate your time, Chad.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much, and always a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in one of the networking rooms again when we meet face to face and our circles cross.
Absolutely, my friend.
Thank you so much for being on, and we really appreciate it. Yeah, lots of nuggets. Show notes will be out shortly, and definitely go check out Michael's website. He's a wealth of knowledge and just an incredible human being that always pays it first. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in the show, because it's just, you're an incredible person, and I really thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you for joining the Pick Your Lane podcast. You can find more episodes on the podcast platform of your choice. Chad and Peter welcome you to visit their site, pickyourlane.com, for access to more content from our guests. There you will find curated interviews, education, and some offerings that will help you pick your lane on the way to financial freedom.